right, so we are scheduled to go live right now. So hopefully I am streaming across the Facebooks, and hopefully you can hear me just fine. I'm going to chat for just a couple of minutes before I actually start the reading to let people who may be interested join in on the reading. For those who are not familiar, my name is Kevin Slaughter, and I am the publisher of Underworld Amusements. I have quite a bit of help from various people, from artists and writers. Most of the work that I do is printing, rare, out of print, obscure stuff, but occasionally I have published material from living writers. One of those living writers is my good friend Trevor Blake. And he is well, as the title of his book says, he is a failed egoist. And the book I'm going to read from are his confessions, the Confessions of a Failed Egoist, and other writings by Trevor Blake. I'm specifically going to read an essay that he actually requested. I put the call out for recommendations of what I should read, and I got a few good ones. If this goes well, if people are actually interested in this and watch it, then I'll do more. I will do a series of kind of these casual book readings. Part of the problem with publishing such obscure material and being interested in such obscure material is that, well, not many other people are, and where they are scattered far and wide. And I have good friends and comrades across the country and throughout the globe who have taken an interest in the work that I do and have assisted me in one way or another. And so I have a great appreciation for that. And many of you have done the best possible way of showing your appreciation by buying some of the books that I have published, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm a micro publisher, and the stuff that I do is very obscure, very passionate about it, and I hope that comes through, even if a few typos do as well. So, if we are watching, let me see. I've got a notice that we are actually live, so that is good. I don't know if we've got anybody watching. I do have somebody in the other room who's going to give me any questions that you guys have. I can't really do this very easily, and I don't want to be reading off of a phone or off of a computer, so if you have any questions about Underworld Amusements, about Trevor Blake's book, about another book that I've published, you feel free to ask those. If you want to type them into the comments, if you're watching via the Underworld Amusements page, I don't know if somebody shares this video, whether it's going to also create multiple comment streams or not. So I would hate for us to not see your question if you posted one. So try to get over to the Underworld Amusements page and watch the main video on the main page. And hopefully it's streaming just fine, and very good. So I think we have some people watching. I just got a notice, and so thanks for hanging out. I'm going to try to read you a little bedtime story here. I guess it's still earlier in the day on the West Coast, and so thanks for joining me. The first, I'm going to probably read two essays from Trevor Blake's book, and this was published in 2014. The first essay I'm going to read is called "It's a Sin." there's unicorns, and then there's the idea of unicorns. There's sin, and then there's the idea of sin. The evidence for the latter is not evidence of the former. This screed is the idea of the sin, and rather than get mired down in the metadomain of your idea, of my idea, of the idea of sin, I'm just going to talk about sin. Now, sin would be the germ theory of ethics, except germ theory explains something about the body. And sin can be measured whether the body is contaminated or not. When Dr. Other Person or Professor Social Structure says you're sin sick, you are whether you feel it or not. How handy it is that they have a few bottles of snake oil left to clean the wound for you. Now, after-the-fact backups can be hacked for the origin of sin. Tell us another story, Grandpa. Like this. Thousands of years ago, people noticed that if you had sex with many different partners, you got a certain kind of sick, and those who had sex with fewer or no people didn't get sick in the same way. So it was reasonable to think that there was something about supernumerary sex that summoned sickness. And so sin was suggested. Sin stuck around after we discovered disease, but the if-then reasoning of long ago was sound. Or this one. Homosexuals don't make babies, and that's bad for the tribe, so homosexuality is a sin. Or this one. If you have sex with a slave, you might hesitate to dispatch them when needed, and that's bad for the tribe, so don't have sex with slaves, especially slaves captured from other tribes. Now you see the problems. A reasonable origin doesn't assure us of a reasonable outcome. Sin might have begun as a pre-scientific germ theory, but let's keep that skeleton in the closet, not on display as today's model of how things work. Sin seduces us as a system, but the big picture turns out to be a clumsy, cluttered collage. Nothing in particular makes some sex sinful while slavery stays satisfactory, or the inverse, perverse, eh? The secondary support for sin says, while sin may stay a spook story, it stops certain situations society cannot support. Same-sex marriage will sever the genetic heritage of some small amount of up to 3% of the population. Heaven forbid the homos adopt or care for kids from past relationships. And to condone same-sex marriage is to condone same-sex sex, and some percent of the 3% of the same-sex couples who marry will later divorce, a sin in itself. And for all this, same-sex marriage is living in super sin. Since society says it seeks to stop sodomite and sapphists, call it a sin. Call it what you like. What society wants is secondary to what I want. The third defense of sin is of divine origin. Now, God made sure we had the motive and means to offend him. As proof of his goodness, yeah, I know. I won't argue that because God does not and cannot exist, we can ignore sin. I argue that even if God did exist, no authority outside of myself is supreme. Roll, sinners, roll. A fourth, sin seems selective in its sanctions. Eating this meat is sin, but eating that meat is not. Sex with this one is sin, but sex with that one is not. Owning slaves from this tribe is a sin, but owning slaves from that tribe is not. I'm the arbiter of the arbitrary, and inconsistency is not a concern. Lack of self-awareness about our whims is the worry. Fifth, sin cannot tell the difference between the horse and the cart. Lusty thoughts co-occur with lusty deeds, but they do not cause them. Sixth, Sin suggests a certainty of nature not accorded to experience. Seduction is always a sin. Slaughter is always a sin. Okay, I don't think he was actually talking about me. Only the self is eternal, and outside of me, all is in flux and to be evaluated by my entertainment. Sin gets in the way of my doing evil and doing good. Sin is compulsion of what I must do or must not do. I might set up a rhyming scheme to make my days more poetic, but even these epics must end. Not compulsion of this world compels me, no compulsion of this world compels me. Secular sin should be shrugged off as silly, but sure enough it smothers smart people who should know better. One side of the river, the religionists are yelling, heretic, witch, kuffar, while on the other bank, the mountebanks are yelling, racist, sexist, hater. You'll excuse me as I dismissively drift downstream. Humanists speak of natural rights. Theologists speak of natural wrongs. Where sin is a successful shroud to spook the simpletons, wear it with a flourish. Otherwise, resolve to absolve yourself. And that was It's a Sin from Trevor Blake's Confessions of a Failed Egoist. Now, I don't know if anybody actually typed in any questions while I was reading, and I hope my assistant is going to let me know if that's the case. And I will answer if so. And if so, I will answer any questions. If not, then I will go ahead and read the next piece. And I have tried to decide between a short essay on Objectivism called Objectiv-isn't and another piece called Really. And I believe I'm just going to go ahead and read the piece on Objectivism. Now, I've been personally interested in Ayn Rand's philosophy for quite some time because I'm interested in these flamboyant, theatrical outsiders who live life by their own rules. And Ayn Rand fits that mold well as Anton LaVey and a few others that I could name that have been a real influence on me. That said, it's hard to name a more polarizing figure than Ayn Rand. People seem to either love her or hate her, or they've never heard of her. One of the three options are available. And people who hate her really, really hate her. And it's not just the left, it is the right as well. And I like that. I think that means she's doing something right, even if she's doing a lot of things wrong. I like to read criticisms of the things that I am interested in. And that is what Trevor has written here. He has written a criticism of Objectivism. And I'm going to read that criticism to you. The first Objectivist I met was in college. Now he's doing hard time for statutory rape. Now that doesn't advance my egoist argument against Objectivism, but he was a dick to a beautiful friend, so I'm going to spit on him while he's down. I read Atlas Shrugged twice. The second time, I annotated my copy. I enjoyed it in the same way I enjoy listening to music at excessive volume. Do it too much and it causes damage, but every now and then it's a superb abrasive to scrub the brain pan clean. I've read all of Rand's books, 3 biographies, and the main contents of the main websites, yet I am not an objectivist. I comply with the order to turn in my objective visa, never to visit the Gulch again. For all 3 books, essays, lectures, and interviews Rand gave us on objectivism, she declined to write much at all about what it is. Plenty of examples of objectivism applied, but an example and a definition are different animals. Rand could give us an introduction to objectivist epistemology, but just an introduction and not the epistemology itself. Galt's speech in Atlas Shrugged stands as the best candidate for what objectivism is. I'll paraphrase from the original 90 pages, and check your premises if you think I've misquoted the source. Living things can be either alive or not alive. For living things to act in ways that encourage life is both rational and moral. A union between that which is rational and what is morally good. Plants encourage their own life automatically and are unable to sacrifice themselves. Man does not have the automatic knowledge of how to encourage his own life, unlike all other living things which have instincts. Plants do not destroy their own roots, and birds do not break their own wings. Only man acts against his own self-interest by sacrificing himself to others. Were I listening to John Galt read that screed on the radio, that's about where I would have turned the dial. The world is replete with living things that sacrifice themselves. Many a virus kills its host. Without a programmed cell death, living beings made up of cells would not thrive. The first meal of many baby insects is mommy insect. Other insects go to bug heaven as part of the act of reproduction. And any number of animals will sacrifice themselves in a fight. Among those fighting animals are we humans. When objectivists have a dog in the fight, it's reasonable. Objectivists say you shouldn't risk your life to save a stranger or a villain, but you should risk your life to save your beloved, because your beloved is one of your values, like rationality is a value. So saving your beloved at your own risk is like self-preservation. Presto changeo! But when it's the other guy fighting, that's anti-life and anti-reason. Life in competition is moderately well described by objectivism, but not parasitic life or symbiotic life. Everybody knows smoking is a pleasant and unhealthy hobby, but it's okay to be anti-life when it's so round, so firm, so fully packed. Objectivists want liberty and union, now and forever, one and inseparable. Altruism in living beings is unexplained to my satisfaction, and that includes the hand-waving of objectivism. Since non-false conclusions cannot flow from false claims, and since Galt's speech is Rand's one claim as to what objectivism is, full stop. Objectivism falls on its face. We can leave the rest there on the floor. But let's kick it around. Why violence is excluded from reason is more a matter of tradition than truth. Violence is unavoidable and therefore rational. To pretend there could be no violence is fantastic thinking. Violence even follows logical structures. If I hit that guy, then I get his stuff, except if he hits me harder. All men have an ancestor, maybe even a known ancestor, who killed to gain mate, meat, and mirth. If those ancestors had done otherwise, none of us would be here today. Rand is against violent conquest, except if it is Europeans taking the Americas, because the natives weren't using it anyway. Objectivism sets rationality and Rand on the throne. And while I say rationality means someone who can learn, Objectivists say rationality is the trait of someone who has learned. Having a good gander at a white swan, they'll have no truck with your black swan. Objectivism says once you learn tap dancing is good and short skirts are bad, there's no reason to check your premises. You're now a hammer in a world made of nails. Here's the list of compulsory reading. Here's the list of forbidden reading. Here's a list of compulsory music. Here's the list of forbidden music. How the list makers are able to expose themselves to these ideotoxins without harm to know they are inherently harmful to all exposed to them goes unexplained. Objectivism has closed the is-ought gap. Consciousness is ultimately based on perception. That works for objectivists who can ignore consciousness of the born blind and deaf. The senses are valid. That works for objectivists who can ignore sensory illusions, phantom limbs, hallucinations, mental illness. Feelings are not a source of knowledge. That works for objectivists who can ignore a lack of the demarcation line between thought and emotion. Truth claims come from evidence. And that works for objectivists who can ignore false positives. The newborn human mind is a blank slate. That works for objectivists who can ignore neonatal instincts like tonic neck, the Palmer grasp, the Moro reflex, the Babinski reflex, blinking, stepping, rooting, swimming, and tendencies to inherit the intelligence of one's parents. The theory of evolution is only a hypothesis. That works for objectivists who can ignore all the evidence on the subject ever gathered. For those objectivists who can't ignore, there's always name-calling, yelling, excommunication, and other expressions of randroid rationality. Objectivism says you shouldn't live your life for the benefit of another man. Okay. But that doesn't lead to refraining from asking or forcing another man to live his life for your benefit. Objectivism is haunted by the spook of natural rights. Objectivism says a man cannot think when he's got a gun pointed to his head, but he can think just fine when he's the one pointing the gun. More than anything, what marks objectivism as a marked to Marx is its marked maligning of art. Trevor loves doing that. More than anything, we will try again. What marks objectivism as marketed to Marx is its marked maligning of art. Heroic art is all right, and with that I agree, but then there's the morbid, the decadent, the obscene, and the functional. I've got no time at all for a Vatican list of forbidden books, and even less for an objectivist list of forbidden art. Insisting art must be for something is foreign to my mind. Agitating that art shouldn't exist unless it gets the Rand nod is odd. A bit queer, as was Rand noting homosexuals cannot reproduce through sex and therefore are hideous and repulsive anti-life libertines. Like a religion, objectivism amassed adepts around an ascended one, then shattered into schisms. Rand's champion, Nathaniel Brandon, built up a mighty tower to Her Majesty, all of which was struck down when, after stealing him away from his wife, Rand objectivited to Brandon getting some on the side. Schism the second happened when David Kelly willingly committed the unpardonable sin of telling a room full of libertarians that they were wrong. The problem, you see, is that objectivists can't even talk to libertarians. That gives them sanction, condones their ideas and existence. Stony silence is the only appropriate answer to apostates. Kelly went on to found the Institute for Objectivist Studies, which changed its name to the Objectivist Center, which changed its name to the Atlas Society, the joining of which precludes you from membership in Peikoff's Ayn Rand Institute for life. membership has its penalties. Objectivism is a nice place to be from. Read some Rand. It'll help you get your me on. It's a good magic show if you keep your hand on your moral wallet. Go out and meet some objectivists. They tend to be smart, or child rapists, or smart child rapists. Nothing is more A to me than A. Well, I hope you enjoyed my little casual reading, and if so, I will do some more sometime, possibly soon. Again, that was from Trevor Blake's book, Confessions of a Failed Egoist, which I have conveniently kept the cover on the screen over this way, I believe. If you liked it, buy a copy. It's only $10, which is pretty cheap. If you have Amazon Prime, you're not even paying for shipping. Or you could buy it directly from the publisher, in which you will pay for shipping. But I will make more money off of it, and I'll appreciate that. All right, so let's see if anybody has actually published a question about anything. Producer? All right, so my producer is saying that she cannot see any questions. I'm going to just double check in my stream here. I see a comment that says loud and clear, and I'm going to open up here. Very good, Raul. Thank you for joining us, Raul, my good friend. The next reading will... Oh, I actually had that figured out. Oh, the next reading is going to be from Benjamin D. Cassier's book, New York is Hell, which is the most recent release. I really think... I'm very biased towards all of the books that I publish. I mean, I will say that they have not all been grade A stuff, but there's some value to the grade B and C stuff that I have released. Trevor Blake's book is great. I definitely recommend it. It's a fun, fast read, and he touches upon a number of subjects that I have been fascinated as well. One of the most interesting things about Trevor Blake is where he and I's personal experience have overlapped and where they have diverged. I have quite a bit of respect for him as a thinker and as a writer and as a friend, and I'm honored to have his friendship. Benjamin D. Cassier's, if you know anything about me, you know that I have been working very hard to revive his work for a number of years now, and I maintain BenjaminDCassiers.com. I have published 5 different books associated with Benjamin D. Cassiers, and the most recent one is called New York is Hell, Thinking and Drinking in the Beautiful Beast, and it has a wonderful introduction by Peggy Nadramia, the high priestess of the Church of Satan, and also a mixologist of cocktail vultures. And she actually recreates 2 or 3 cocktails that are discussed in the book, New York is Hell. So you can, so it's actually, I'm going to recommend you jump to the back of the book first, make one of those 3 cocktails, and then go back to the front of the book and start reading from there. And I think you'll definitely get the best experience from that. So that's going to be the next reading. And oh, thank you, Jesse. There's a slight delay between you guys asking questions or making a comment and me getting that question, because there is a broadcast delay of about 10 seconds or so. So I've been trying to not let that show too much. So is there any other questions that you guys have? If not, then I'm going to call it a wrap. Again, thank you so much. I don't know when I'm going to be doing the next reading. Again, I'm going to see how this turns out. But I am going to give you a sneak peek at that. That is a t-shirt coming soon from Asp Apparel that I designed, and I gifted the design to Asp Culture. ASP Culture, that is their new name. And they are going to have that soon live on their website. So I think it's a bit of an old meme, but I think it's a lot of fun. So hopefully you guys saw that. And thank you again. I will see you online, and I will see you next time.